Whispers of Change. Chapter 1. Echoes at Dawn. The morning sun spilled its golden warmth over the summit of reflection, stretching across the ancient stones of the Forum of Discontent. A cacophony of voices rose from the crowd gathered at the lake's edge, where Oriana Pax knelt by the water, her fingers gently brushing the fur of an injured hare nestled in the tall grasses. The scent of damp earth mingled with the sharp tang of mountain herbs she had gathered earlier. Nearby, the aroma of grilled fish from the market wafted through the air, stirring her senses. For now, though her focus remained solely on the fragile creature before her, drawing solace from its delicate presence amidst the chaos. The murmurs of the crowd drifted like leaves caught in a breeze, hinting at the brewing turmoil that had brought them all to this sacred place. Oriana cradled the trembling hare, its eyes wide with fear. She whispered a prayer to Eleanor, the goddess of the mountains, her fingers deftly retrieving stinging nettle and wild thyme from her satchel. Nearby, fishermen laughed as they cleaned their catch, their hands peeling the skin from the fish, glistening scales catching the light. May Eleanor's light guide us through these troubled times. One jested, tossing a fish head into the air, earning a chuckle and a playful shove from his companion. Their camaraderie contrasted sharply with the rising tension from the forum, where voices surged like storm clouds, debating the fate of the towering statue that had watched over them for generations as she tended to the hare. Snippets of the argument drifted across the water, each sharp retort cutting through her thoughts. "It's just a pile of stone," a voice shouted, followed by another. "You disrespect the ancestors." The words ignited her own conflicted feelings about loyalty to heritage versus the desire for change. Pressing a cool cloth against the creature's wound, she absorbed the moment's gravity, her act of kindness juxtaposed with the discontent brewing behind her. The hare quivered, but leaned into her touch, a fleeting comfort amidst the turmoil. The crowd thickened, the air crackling with dissent. Oriana focused on the gathering, her hands stilled for a moment. Just then a figure stepped forward, a woman draped in a vibrant cloak that marked her as one of the wealthier townsfolk. She gestured with an open palm, a sign of respect, but her words dripped with scorn. "This monument is a relic of superstition, holding us back." The weight of such disrespect hung heavily in the air. With a deep breath, Oriana returned her focus to the hare, feeling its soft pulse beneath her fingers. Would the vanished people, echoes of the past, guide them if they could witness this? She finished binding the hare's wound and released it back into the wild, her spirit a mix of resolve and uncertainty. The morning sun filtered through the sturdy pines, casting dappled shadows across the rugged terrain of the summit of reflection. Crisp mountain air filled Oriana's lungs, mingling with the earthy scent of damp stone and pine needles beneath her feet. The serene lake shimmered like a silken sheet, its surface glinting in the sunlight, while the towering statue loomed ahead, a silent sentinel witnessing the ongoing strife of the community. Cradling a small, injured creature nestled in her hands, Oriana felt an unyielding pressure, as unyielding as the stone bench beneath her. Conflicting loyalties and compassion churned within her, intensifying the turmoil she faced. Oriana gently cradled the small animal, its fur matted and stained, the faint whimpering pulling at her heart. Tension filled the air, echoing the heated debate drifting from the stone amphitheater nearby, voices rising and falling with fervor. She whispered soothing words, each syllable a balm against the chaos, as she bandaged its wounds. The coolness of the creature's skin sent shivers through her fingers, contrasting sharply with the warmth of her breath. Her hands trembled with determination and doubt, caught in the turmoil of her emotions as the voices intensified. As she worked, her gaze flickered to the statue, its weathered surface glowing softly in the morning light. A part of her understood the desire to erase the painful history it embodied, yet the memories of her ancestors urged her to honor their struggles. The crowd surged, voices sharp and passionate, each shout striking her like a blow to the gut, blending with her own turmoil as she grappled with the compassion for the wounded animal and her loyalty to the past. The lake glimmered invitingly, its tranquil beauty contrasting with the commotion nearby. Her pulse quickened as she pressed her fingers against the creature's side, feeling it shiver beneath her touch. The wind whispered, carrying her internal conflict, as she pondered a future where compassion and tradition could coexist.
Gazing back at the statue, Oriana's chest tightened. The stone giant stood resolute, a reminder of the struggles endured, yet today it felt more like an oppressive weight than a source of inspiration. The air crackled with energy as the debates intensified, voices rising like the tide. Here, in this quiet nook, the gentle lapping of the lake against the shore filled the air, a momentary reprieve from the storm of voices. She dipped her fingers into the cool water, feeling the smooth surface ripple around her hand, a fleeting moment of peace amidst the chaos.
Dusk settled over the summit of reflection, casting long shadows across the serene lake below. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth as Oriana Pax perched at the edge of the stone amphitheatre. Her pulse quickened with racing thoughts. Behind her, the statue of the founder towered over her, a chilling reminder of the traditions binding her community. The relentless cries of an injured animal she had failed to save echoed in her ears, amplifying the urgency of her dilemma. With only 3 days until the council's decision, Oriana grappled with the stark reality that if she remained silent, the ancient forest would soon fall to the chainsaws of progress. 3 days to either uphold her loyalty or embrace the light of change. Thoughts swirled chaotically, like a brewing storm. Loyalty to her community was ingrained in her, yet the statue's cold gaze transformed into a shackle, suffocating her sense of devotion. Accusations from recent debates replayed in her mind. Phrases like complacent and traitor taunted her. She squeezed her eyes shut, desperate to drown out the noise, but the truth clawed at her insides. She could remain passive and watch the destruction unfold, or risk everything to speak out against the council. The stakes were impossibly high, and if she didn't choose soon, everything she loved could be lost forever, branding her a traitor in her own home. As she glanced into the lake, its surface distorted her reflection like a fractured mirror. A knot twisted in her stomach. She questioned whether the townsfolk would turn against her if she voiced her beliefs. Was it right to just sit back? Time was slipping away, and the horizon darkened with the onset of night. Her breath quickened as a distant roar pierced the tranquility of the evening, a countdown to impending loss. "I reckon I really got to decide soon, 'cause with every tick of the clock, that knot in my gut gets tighter," she muttered, her voice barely a whisper. Just then a familiar voice broke through her haze. "Oriana," it was Mira, her childhood friend, scrambling up the incline with urgency in her tone. "You have to talk to the council. They need to hear your voice. We're running out of time." The plea resonated, igniting a fire within Oriana that could no longer be ignored. Would speaking out cost her everything she cherished? The statue stood sentinel behind her, a reminder of her roots and the weight of the choices ahead. Oriana stood heart-pounding as the reality of her choice pressed upon her. She opened her mouth, but words caught in her throat, tangled in fear. Would she betray her community, or let it drown in ignorance? With a distant roar echoing through the trees, as dusk settled over the summit of reflection, the last rays of sunlight painted the rugged plateau in hues of gold and crimson, casting long shadows over the ancient stone statue of Elthira, the spirit of the vanished people. Oriana Pax sat on the cool stone, her fingers tracing the mossy edges, while the faint scent of mountain herbs lingered in the air, mingling with the earthy aroma of damp soil. An injured hare nestled against her thigh, its soft fur a reminder of life's fragility. The distant sounds of laughter and crackling evening fires from the settlement below echoed through the valley, while a heavy silence wrapped around her. Tonight, as the lake shimmered like a broken mirror, turmoil roiled within her, the voices from the earlier debates swirling like the gathering storm clouds above. The gentle lapping of the lake's waves urged her forward, but uncertainty coiled in her gut. Earlier, she had shared a meal of grilled fish, seasoned with wild herbs, with her fellow villagers, their hearty laughter filling the air as they passed around barley bread and soft goat cheese. Yet the arguments over the future of their traditions tightened her chest, gnawing at her resolve. Elder Merrick's voice had risen above the rest, warning against straying from the old ways, the very traditions that had sustained them for generations. Speaking out could invite the wrath of the vanished, a fate no one dared tempt. The rabbit shifted, and she absent-mindedly stroked its fur, seeking solace in its presence. The sun sank lower, painting the sky in shades of purple that reflected her inner chaos. A communal feast awaited them at the settlement, a celebration meant to honor the ancestors.
As the scent of wood smoke wafted up from the fires, mingling with the lingering sweetness of blueberries, urgency twisted in her gut. Remaining silent would mean complicity, yet speaking out risked shattering the familial bonds she cherished. History pressed against her like an unwelcome weight, and she shivered at the thought of her choices. In the distance she saw a figure approaching, a fisherman returning from the lake, his catch glimmering in the dying light. He paused to bow his head as he passed, a gesture of respect that ached with the weight of what was at stake. The community thrived on unspoken rules, and as he disappeared down the path, she whispered a silent prayer to Elanor, the goddess of the mountains, seeking clarity. The hare nuzzled closer, its heartbeat steady, an anchor against the tempest brewing within her. As dusk deepened and stars pierced the darkening sky, Oriana felt the pull of her decision weighing heavier. The lake shimmered with reflections of the past and fragile hopes for the future, stark against the looming threat of the machines. She took a deep breath, cool air filling her lungs, resolving to stand before her community and voice her truth, even at great risk. As the first stars blinked into existence, a raven cawed overhead.
The forum of discontent thrummed with tension, voices clashing and rising in a chaotic symphony as Oriana Pax stepped forward, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Today was her stand against the community's decision to raze the ancient forest, a vital part of their history and identity. Each second felt charged, a reminder that by week's end they could lose this sacred ground forever. As people turned to her, skepticism and hostility etched on their faces, she fought the instinct to retreat. This was her moment. She clutched it tightly. The stakes high, betrayal loomed, and silence would resonate through their community for generations. Oriana drew a shaky breath, her palms dampened against the rough wood of the podium. "Y'all, we really need to think this through," she cried, her voice trembling yet resolute. The crowd shifted uneasily, discontent rippling through the assembly. Whispers erupted like sparks in the dry air, eyes narrowed and unyielding. "The forest ain't just trees, it's part of our soul, folks." But as she spoke, doubt gnawed at her resolve. What if they turned against her? A harsh voice cut through her words like a blade. Betrayal. The accusation hung heavy in the air, shifting expressions from concern to outright fury. A man in the front row stood, fists clenched, his face flushed with anger. "You dare oppose us, Oriana? You would choose the forest over your own people?" Her pulse quickened, hostility mounting as the crowd's fury grew. This was no longer just a debate. It had transformed into a battle for her very identity. Each second intensified the weight of her words, which could either save her or shatter her future. The murmurs escalated into chaos, voices colliding in a cacophony. Some rallied in her defense, but the majority turned, eyes seething with anger. "You're not one of us," a woman spat, venom lacing her tone. "You'll ruin everything we've built." Oriana felt the walls closing in, the countdown pressing heavily on her mind. 3 days remained, 3 days before the machines would roll in, silencing her beloved forest forever. She had to act, but the dread of losing her community gnawed at her. If she stood for what was right, would she sacrifice all she had ever known? As she prepared to respond, her voice caught in her throat. Sweat trickled down her back as the crowd surged closer, panic gripping her. What if she couldn't convince them? What if she lost them all just then? A chorus of threats erupted from the hostile crowd, freezing Oriana in place. Her thoughts raced, realizing she had no backup plan. The urgency pressed against her, and she felt time slipping away. "We can't let this happen," she shouted, desperation spilling over. Just then, a tall figure stepped. Chapter 2: Echoes of Resolve. Dawn broke over the forum of discontent, the soft light illuminating the cobblestone square where townsfolk gathered, their murmurs rising like wisps of steam in the crisp morning air. The scent of grilled fish wafted from a nearby stall, where a fisherman effortlessly slid a fresh catch onto a cutting board, its scales glinting under the early sun. At the center stood Oriana Pax, her wild curls catching the breeze as she faced the community leaders, their robust figures silhouetted against the pastel sky. Today was pivotal, a fight for the elders' right to live, and the very soul of her community. The air buzzed with unspoken fears, amplified by the distant call of a raven, an omen that sent chills down her spine. The leaders assembled around a wooden platform, their layered woolen garments billowing slightly in the breeze. Each held a bowl of steaming herb-infused stew, the aroma rich and inviting, yet Oriana's stomach twisted with hunger as she pushed it aside, focusing instead on the elders' fate.
She stepped forward, her voice steady and commanding. "You can't do this. The elder has guided us through storms. He deserves our respect, not a sentence of death." A murmur of dissent rippled through the crowd, but the leaders remained unmoved, their expressions hardened as they exchanged glances, perhaps recalling a time when the elder had been their mentor. As one raised a hand for silence, the weight of the moment pressed down on Oriana. Did they remember the stories of the vanished people, their spirits whispering warnings on the wind? A black raven soared across the sky, and Oriana's breath caught in her throat. The elders had warned that a raven's appearance foretold strife, and here it was, as if mocking her plea. She resisted the urge to call out to Eleanor, the goddess of the mountains, for a miracle. Instead, she inhaled deeply, steadying herself. "You think this will unify us? You will only deepen the divide." Her voice rang out, met by the communal chant of the crowd, who longed to believe that hope could be restored without bloodshed. The leaders shifted, their eyes narrowing at her audacity. Suddenly, a commotion erupted at the edge of the square. A group of rebels, faces painted with the colors of their cause, surged forward, shouting in support of the elder. Their presence ignited a spark of hope in the crowd, but the ground beneath Oriana shifted, a reminder that this was not just about her anymore. It was a battle for the community's soul. The leaders exchanged glances filled with uncertainty, their bowls of stew forgotten as they weighed their options. They had dismissed her, but now the rebellion could no longer be ignored. As the rebels shouted the elder's name, the clock of fate ticked louder in Oriana's mind, thickening.
The sun cast a warm light over the forum of discontent, illuminating the faces of the gathered crowd. Voices swelled in passionate debate, echoing against the mountain's stoic presence. Each passionate plea that rose from Oriana's lips quickened her pulse, driven by the whispers of the vanished urging her to fight for the living. Shadows danced across the square, not just from the sun's ascent, but from the weight of tradition threatening to stifle hope. Today was pivotal. It could ignite a flame of rebellion or plunge her community into despair. We can't just throw our own people away for some empty idea of unity. Oriana's voice sliced through the noise, sharp as a knife. The crowd paused, eyes wide. Had she pierced through the haze of fear? Her heart raced with determination as she stepped closer to the edge of the platform, gripping the rough wood to steady herself. Energy crackled in the air, a shared pulse among the people. "Our elders got wisdom, not weakness," she called out, invoking the spirit of their shared past. Agreement rippled through the crowd, but the faction leaders advanced, fierce and unyielding, their faces taut with intent. "Unity demands sacrifice," one shouted, fists clenched at his sides, muscles coiled like springs ready to snap. The crowd wavered, uncertainty creeping in like a shadow, threatening to extinguish Oriana's flame. The leaders loomed, their intimidation palpable. Oriana's throat tightened as their disdain wrapped around her resolve like barbed wire. "What is it worth to silence the voices of our past?" she continued, her voice steady despite the chaos. "You're not just betraying the elder, you're betraying yourselves." A ripple of agreement sparked among the crowd, but the faction leaders advanced, fierce and unyielding. They glared, their bodies tense, the air thick with confrontation. Would her defiance hold against their hostility? The crowd swayed, caught between fear and hope. Oriana's breath quickened. She scanned the faces, searching for the flicker of recognition. "Look around you," she shouted, her gaze sweeping over the crowd. "This is our moment. We are not bound by the chains of tradition." The leaders roared back, their voices a desperate chorus, eager to reclaim control. But in that moment, Oriana spotted a child near the front, eyes wide and shining with belief. The sight anchored her. They could not let fear dictate their fate. She raised her arms, palms open, inviting them to join her. "Together we can find a new way forward." The tension in the air thickened. The sun hung low over the forum of discontent, its rays struggling to pierce the morning mist that clung to the air like a shroud. Oriana Pax stepped onto the makeshift stage, her heart racing as the scent of grilled fish wafted from nearby stalls, mingling with the earthy aroma of damp soil. A throng of faces surrounded her, some weathered by the cold winds of the unyielding mountains, others young and hopeful, clutching bowls of herb-infused stew. The murmurs of the crowd ebbed and flowed, punctuated by the distant laughter of children.
their cheeks stained with the juice of freshly picked blueberries. This gathering was not just a meeting, it was a crucible of history, and a weight settled on Oriana as she prepared to speak. Oriana raised her voice, her words weaving through the crowd like a wild mountain stream. "We're on sacred ground, folks, where our kin used to gather and share stories over meals. If we let them take our elder, we're throwing away all they fought for." A murmur rippled through the assembly, but as hope flickered in her chest, a figure stepped from the shadows. Calder, a leader of the opposing faction. His cloak of fine wool billowed around him like a dark cloud. He gestured with an open palm, a sign of his rank, and began to speak, his voice smooth and polished like the silverware of the wealthy. "Oriana Pax, you expect us to listen to a traitor? That elder's past is dirty, and it's a stain on our community that won't wash away." The crowd reacted, shifting uncomfortably as Calder leaned forward, a sneer etched across his face. "Do you not remember the tales the elder once consorted with the vanished, seeking their favor, their whispers echoing through the mountains like a warning? To defend him is to invite the wrath of the spirits." The tension in the air thickened, palpable as the scent of freshly baked barley bread from a nearby stall faded beneath the weight of his accusations. A wave of uncertainty washed over Oriana, her heart racing. "We cannot turn against our own because of fear." An elderly woman, her back hunched and hands trembling, stepped forward, clutching a bowl of fish stew. "My family has shared meals with the elder for years. We cannot let our history be rewritten by lies." Her voice quivered, yet resonated through the crowd, igniting sparks of resistance. But Calder was quick to counter, his tone dripping with disdain. "And what of your children? Would you have them suffer the consequences of harboring such a traitor?" The crowd wavered, caught between the warmth of community and the cold grip of fear. Doubt gnawed at Oriana's insides as she scanned the crowd. As Oriana prepared to speak again, her gaze met that of a young man in the front row, his face streaked with dirt from the mines.
The sun rose over the forum of discontent, its rays slicing through the thick morning mist, illuminating the gathering crowd. A cacophony of voices filled the air, sharp shouts and fervent cries blending with the earthy scent of damp soil and fresh leaves. The aroma whisked Oriana back to her childhood, to afternoons spent under the sprawling oak, listening to her grandmother's tales. She stood on the weathered stone steps, her hands gripping the rough edges as she steadied herself amidst the rising chaos. Today she needed to be a beacon, not merely a voice. "Y'all, we need to hold on to our roots, like the old oaks that keep standing strong," she called out, her voice steady and fierce, each word a plea for unity. A roar of dissent rippled through the crowd, drowning out her words. Faction leaders, their faces twisted in anger, thrust their fists in the air, rallying their supporters. Oriana gripped her stomach, tension knotting inside her as she fidgeted with the small stone she always carried, its cool surface providing a brief comfort. She gasped, her breath hitching as the sea of faces turned away, the weight of their indifference pressing down on her. "Listen, folks, this ain't just about us, it's the forest we grew up with," she shouted, her voice gaining strength, yet feeling the heavy silence of doubt hanging in the air. The scent of pine wafted through the forum, a reminder of the forests where she had played as a child, seeking refuge from pressures that felt like chains. Memories of her friend Lyra rushed back, the way she had stood up against the council, her spirit unbreakable until it had been shattered by their judgment. Oriana's chest tightened and she clutched her stone tighter, thoughts colliding like branches in a storm. Shouts and jeers erupted, drowning out her resolve, but she pressed on. "Think of our ancestors, they fought for this land." A loud bang echoed through the forum as someone hurled a stone at the faction leaders. The crowd surged, bodies crashing together in a wave of fury. Oriana stumbled back, a thundering pulse echoing in her ears. Fists flew and voices rose in anger as panic clawed at her throat amidst the chaos. "No, stop! We can't do this!" she screamed, but her words were lost in the frenzy. The anger and division among her people ran deeper than she had realized, and despair settled heavily in her chest. Amid the chaos, she glimpsed an elder, fear etched in their eyes. She had come here to rally hope, to inspire change, yet all she saw was division and hostility. She took a step forward, desperation rising within her. The forum of discontent thrummed with palpable tension as Oriana Pax stood at the center, eyes locked on the anxious faces surrounding her. Today she had to rally her fellow citizens against the impending execution of the elder, a fate that would not only rob them of a cherished leader, but also threaten the very soul of their community. 3 days remained until the elder's decree, and with each passing moment she could almost hear the countdown echoing in her mind. The sun blazed overhead, illuminating the crumbling stone walls and ancient monuments that bore witness to the land's turbulent history. Drawing a deep breath, Oriana readied herself for the battle ahead, heart steadying with purpose. They planned to execute him. Oriana's voice cut through the murmur of the crowd, a fierce urgency in her tone. "Y'all, we gotta come together. Can't let fear run our lives." She searched the sea of faces for any flicker of hope, but all she saw were deep lines of worry etched in their expressions. A knot twisted in her stomach. Their hesitance felt like a weight pressing down on her. If we don't stand united now, the forest, our home, will be lost forever. The community leaders shifted uneasily, their expressions revealing their internal conflict. A stout man with a graying beard stepped forward, his voice quaking despite his authoritative stance. "You're stirring discord, Oriana. The people are scared. If we oppose the elders, we'll face their wrath, and that could tear us apart." Panic surged within her as she faced the very figures meant to lead them, cowering instead of rallying. "You think this keeps us safe?" she shot back, urgency lacing her words. "We're already losing everything." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd, and Oriana seized the moment, pulse quickening. "Look at what we risk losing." She gestured toward the forest's edge, the trees standing sentinel as if listening. "We can't let fear dictate our actions. They will execute him, and then what? They'll come for all of us next." A woman in the front nodded, eyes shimmering with unshed tears. But the leaders' grim faces told a different story. "We can't afford to alienate ourselves from the community, Oriana. It's too dangerous." The stout man insisted, voice trembling. The clock ticked louder in Oriana's mind, each second a reminder of their dwindling chances. "What do you propose we do then?" Another leader finally spoke, his voice weary, but the doubt hung heavy in the air. "We can't change the elders' minds. They're set in their ways. This isn't our fight to win." The weight of their defeat crashed over Oriana, but within her, determination ignited. "Then we'll take this fight on ourselves," she declared, voice fierce and unwavering. Yet uncertainty rippled through the crowd, the sun dipping lower and tightening the urgency around her throat. With a glance over her shoulder. Chapter 3. Echoes of Resolve. The morning sun cast a pale light over the forum of discontent, illuminating the tension that hung thick in the air, mingling with the scent of grilled fish from nearby stalls. Vendors had set up their makeshift tables, offering skewers of lake fish charred to perfection and herb-infused stews that tempted hungry passers-by. Oriana Pax stood at the edge of the gathering, her heart racing while she observed the community leaders taking their places upon the raised platform. The crowd stirred with anticipation, eyes flickering with a mix of fear and fervor, ready to turn on any hint of dissent, especially after the brutal punishment dealt to the last soul who dared oppose the elders. The aroma of cooked food clashed with the palpable threat of destruction looming ahead, twisting her stomach into knots. Oriana's gaze drifted to the leaders, their garments rich in hues of deep blue and gold, a stark contrast to the drab wool worn by the common folk. She caught Elder Thorin's eye. His furrowed brow sent a chill through her. Known for harsh judgments, he silenced the throng with a raised hand, and Oriana stepped forward, her voice trembling yet resolute. "Now listen, y'all. We can't just throw away what's been passed down to us. Those ruins, they tell our tales, our lives." But her words barely broke through the cacophony of chants that reverberated through the forum, drowning her out as the crowd rallied behind their leaders, fists in the air, eyes ablaze with zeal. A vendor called out, trying to peddle his wares amidst the chaos. "Fresh turnips, caught this morning, grilled just for you." But no one paid him any mind. Oriana spotted a group of men, their hands rough from labor, exchanging furtive glances as they clutched their barley bread, crumbs tumbling onto the stone beneath them. The weight of their silent judgment pressed on her. Another dissenter lay broken before them, an example etched into the community's history. Would they turn their backs on her now, too? The chanting surged, an almost primal call echoing off the stone walls of the forum. "Destroy the old!" they shouted, an anthem of fear that drowned out any whisper of reason. As she tried to rally the courage of those around her, Oriana reached out, palm open in a gesture of respect, hoping they would see the truth in her eyes. "Simon, now folks, don't let fear steer us wrong." But the hostility in their glares was palpable.
a wall of defiance that pushed her back into the shadows. A flicker of movement caught her attention. A black raven landed on the edge of the platform, its beady eyes surveying the crowd. An omen. The whispers of the vanished echoed in her mind, quickening her pulse. Had it come to warn them of impending doom? As the leaders prepared to unveil their plans, an overwhelming sense of isolation washed over Oriana.
The sun sank lower, casting elongated shadows across the summit of reflection, where Oriana Pax balanced on the precipice of her convictions. Below her sprawled a vast wilderness, a vibrant tapestry of greens and browns that her community planned to raise in mere days. The council's decision loomed like a thunderstorm, threatening to seal their fate in concrete and steel. With a hitched breath, she squeezed her eyes shut, the image of her friend's punishment haunting her, a brutal reminder of dissent's cost. The urge to scream for justice battled fiercely with the terror of becoming just another casualty of their ruthless plans, a conflict made tangible by the chill of dusk. Oriana opened her eyes, the fiery hues of dusk painting the horizon with an eerie beauty. Memories of the execution flooded back her friend bound, pleading for mercy while the leaders stood impassively. She had watched, frozen, the weight of her cowardice pressing heavily on her chest. Guilt twisted in her gut as she recalled the crowd cheering, oblivious to the blood on their hands. What in the world have we become? She whispered to the wind, wishing for an answer to her desperate question. But deep down, a voice rose, demanding she choose between the safety of silence and the risk of standing up. Each moment that passed felt like a step closer to irreversible loss. The night encroached with a sense of finality, enveloping Oriana. She shivered, feeling the shadows push her to retreat, yet the sight of the forest, alive and breathing, sparked a fire within her. She envisioned the trees, the life they sheltered, and how easily it could be erased. If I don't do something, who's going to step up? The thought of facing the leaders and potentially sharing her friend's fate paralyzed her resolve. They were powerful, merciless, and the consequences would fall, not just on her, but on anyone who dared to defy them. With 3 days remaining, she had to decide, fight for her beliefs, or remain a silent witness, complicit in the destruction of everything she loved. As the final light faded from the sky, a sense of urgency gripped Oriana. What if she failed? What if her plea for justice led to even more suffering? She paced anxiously, hands trembling as she approached the council. Memories of her ancestors surfaced, their courage in the face of oppression igniting a spark within her. I ain't gonna let 'em take my home, no way, she resolved, her voice trembling yet fierce, clenching her fists. Determination surged against the tide of fear, yet as she turned to descend the summit, a leader's voice echoed in her ears, declaring the irrevocability of their plans. Time was running out, and Oriana had mere hours to make her choice. A sudden rustle in the As dusk settled over the summit of reflection, darkness crept across the rugged plateau, the last rays of sunlight fading behind jagged peaks. Oriana stood at the precipice, her breath quickening as the echoes of punishment replayed in her mind, a haunting tune that taunted her. Below, the forest rustled, its whispers a chilling echo of the lives at stake. Tomorrow loomed like a spectre. Each tick of the clock felt like a relentless summons. Would she speak, or would fear dictate her silence? Her hands clenched at her sides, knuckles white against the encroaching shadows. The trees murmured, their voices mingling with the distant cries of the punished, while the weight of her choice bore down on her, symbolizing her uncertain path. A storm gathered on the horizon, mirroring the turmoil within her, intensifying her sense of urgency. The sky darkened, bruised with shades of purple and indigo, casting an ominous glow over the landscape. Oriana's gaze drifted to the horizon, where the last flicker of daylight surrendered to the night. A surge of anger ignited within her at the thought of the community's leaders, their faces twisted in self-righteous anger, relishing power over the meek. She stepped closer to the edge. The wind whipped against her skin, urging her to release the rage clawing within. What had they done to deserve such tyranny? Each crack of thunder echoed her question, the answer tantalizingly out of reach. Her heart raced at the thought of standing before them, words ready to tumble from her lips like stones. What if she spoke? What if she didn't? A paralyzing fear crept in, slick and cold, wrapping around her throat. She imagined their laughter, recoiling at the thought of their mockery.
Yet the faces of the punished haunted her, their eyes wide with despair, their lives extinguished like the dying light. The forest held its breath, branches swaying in silent support, coaxing her to remember the past, and the cost of silence, the weight of history pressing against her back, both grounding and suffocating. In this moment chaos swirled within her. The winds howled, tugging at her clothes, as if the world beckoned her to join the fray. Oriana inhaled deeply, the scent of damp earth filling her lungs, reminding her of home, of laughter that once echoed through the trees, now stifled under the oppressive thumb of fear. She was more than a witness, she belonged to this land, this community. A sudden clarity illuminated her mind, a beacon amidst the encroaching darkness. No longer could she afford the luxury of silence. She had to act, to reclaim the voices.
At the summit of reflection, dawn erupted in a riot of crimson, casting long shadows over the weary faces of the dissenters gathered beneath the ancient trees. Oriana Pax stood at the forefront, urgency gripping her chest as the burden of their collective hope surged within her. "Y'all, we can't just sit here twiddling our thumbs. We gotta meet them head on," she urged, her voice a fierce whisper battling the rising wind. "If we don't do something soon, we'll lose our home for good, I swear it. We can't let fear silence us." As the sun crested the horizon, time seemed to mock her resolve, each tick echoing the urgency of their mission. The air buzzed with unspoken tension as Oriana scanned the faces around her, searching for the spark of rebellion she needed to ignite. Doubt lingered in their eyes, creeping in like a slow poison. She stepped forward, fists clenched, adrenaline coursing through her veins. "They'll punish us for speaking out, but if we don't stand together, we'll lose everything. Our land, our lives." Her heartbeat thudded in her ears, time slipping away like grains of sand. Just as she sensed the tide of dissent beginning to swell, a roar of laughter sliced through the tension, heralding the arrival of the loyalists. A man emerged from the trees, his smile devoid of warmth. "What do we have here? A little rebellion?" he taunted, eyes glinting with malice. The loyalists moved in, blocking any escape with their menacing presence. "You dare challenge our leaders?" The oppressive weight of their arrival bore down on Oriana, a grim reminder of the dangerous game at play. "We don't have time for this," she shouted, desperation lacing her voice as she rallied her group. "We've got to confront them now. We can't wait until it's too late." The loyalists laughed again, and Oriana watched the dissenters falter, their resolve fraying like old rope. One by one, she saw their determination dissolve as fear took hold. A flicker of doubt brushed against her mind, but she gripped her determination tightly. "This ain't just about us, you know. It's for all them folks who can't fight for themselves." The loyalists surged forward, the air charged with electric fear. Oriana faced them, each heartbeat a reminder of the ticking clock. What would happen if she faltered? Would they all be silenced forever? The loyalist leader stepped closer, his voice a low growl. "You're playing a dangerous game, little girl. Speak out, and you'll meet the same fate as those you're trying to save. No one will stand with you." His words cut deep, twisting like a knife in her gut. The dissenters exchanged looks, uncertainty etched across their faces, panic clawed at Oriana's throat. "We need to move now before it's too late." At dawn, the summit of reflection glowed with the first light, casting a golden veil over the jagged peaks of the unyielding mountains. Oriana stood at the precipice, the chill air biting at her cheeks as she clutched a small piece of barley bread, its earthy aroma mingling with the musk of damp moss. She huddled close to fellow dissenters, their breaths curling in frosty plumes. Nearby, the sound of scraping metal echoed as a fisherman prepared his nets for the day, oblivious to the tension brewing at the summit. The sun crested the mountains, illuminating their resolve, yet fear flickered in their eyes, a reminder of the risk they all faced. The air was thick with anticipation, the summit a silent witness to their struggle. Oriana broke the bread, sharing it among her companions. The hearty taste stirred memories of mountain herbs her mother used to gather. She offered a piece to Merin, the timid herbalist, who accepted it with both hands, bowing his head slightly in gratitude. They all understood the stakes, yet here they were, defying the very leaders who had fed them that morning's fish stew. "For our home," Oriana whispered, drawing strength from the shared meal and the old words of her ancestors, a prayer to Eleanor for courage.
As more dissenters gathered, they formed a circle against the vastness of the mountains, the world below still cloaked in shadows. A hulking figure led the loyalists, his presence imposing as they approached. The ruthless loyalists cast dark shadows on the dissenters, a palpable threat in their approach. Oriana clenched her fists, recalling her mother's warnings, never provoke the wrath of those who wield power. The loyalist leader smirked, and the air thickened with fear, a bitter reminder of their fragile courage mingling with the lingering scent of barley bread. "You think you can challenge us?" he growled, his gaze sweeping over the group. Oriana's stomach twisted as the loyalists closed in, their ruthless reputation hanging over them like a storm cloud. A raven cawed overhead. It was said that seeing one was a sign of strife. She exchanged a glance with Merrin, panic etching his features as the loyalist leader pointed directly at them, silencing even the bravest of her companions. It was a violation of everything they believed in, and Oriana could feel her confidence waver. As the loyalist loomed closer, Oriana stepped forward, her heart thudded violently in her chest, each beat echoing her resolve. "We are not afraid," she shouted, her voice trembling yet fierce. The group behind her hesitated, and she realized the peril they faced.
Chapter 4. Echoes of Resolve. At the summit of reflection, tension crackled in the morning air, the sun casting elongated shadows over the stone amphitheatre, where a towering statue loomed, a relic of oppression that now sparked a brewing conflict. Oriana Pax stood at the forefront, her resolve steeling as heat prickled along her spine. With the week drawing to a close, she was determined to unveil the truth behind the statue's symbolism and rally her community against the regime. The fate of their forest and their future hung precariously in the balance. "Y'all, we gotta talk about what this statue really means," she cried, urgency lacing her warm rural drawl, but the murmurs of dissent among the leaders drowned out her voice. Time was slipping away. They had to listen now. "Ain't nothing to discuss, Oriana. That statue's our bond to this community," the burly chief leader sneered, his face like stone. His words struck hard, making the crowd shift uneasily. A few faces turned away, but Oriana pressed on, her heart racing. "Loyalty ain't worth a dime if it costs us our freedom. This statue's keeping us blind." Her plea sparked a moment of contemplation among some, but the leader's steely glares warned her that time was running out. They had less than a week before the regime's decision would become irreversible, before her people would lose their home forever. Now ain't the time for stirring trouble. Another community leader barked, his booming voice cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. Tension mounted sharply, palpable as smoke. The gaze of the crowd bore down on Oriana, her breath quickening. "We're running out of time," she shouted, desperation tightening her chest. "If we don't stand together, we'll lose everything." Laughter erupted, drowning her out, and she flinched at the derision. If she couldn't convince them now, they'd betray their own people, the very community she loved. Each tick of the clock echoed ominously in her mind, every second a reminder of the impending doom. As the crowd settled, a young woman stepped forward, her voice trembling. "What if she's right?" Silence fell, and the leaders exchanged glances, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. The burly chief slammed his fist into his palm. "You dare question our way?" He turned to Oriana, menace curling his lips. "Continue this path, and you'll face dire consequences. You'll be an outcast, alone. Do not test our loyalty to you." The threat hung heavy, suffocating. The very people she sought to unite were being drawn deeper into conflict. Time slipped through her fingers like sand, and the forest's fate teetered on the edge of a knife, waiting for her next move. Oriana swallowed hard, the fear of isolation gnawing at her resolve. "I won't stop," she declared, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. As the crowd shifted, uncertainty gave rise to whispers of rebellion. The forum of discontent buzzed with tension, voices colliding like thunderclaps in an approaching storm. Oriana Pax perched at the edge of the gathering, her pulse quickened as leaders hurled accusations and demands. She processed the confrontation, knowing she had to make a decision regarding the statue looming behind them, a symbol of oppression and the very forest they risked losing. If she didn't act before the week ended, the consequences would be irreversible. Every moment spent in indecision felt like chains binding her to her seat, with the whispers of the statue echoing in her mind, urging her to rise against the tide of fear. "You don't understand the stakes," a voice boomed from across the forum, cutting through the chaos. The council leader's brow furrowed in frustration as he pointed toward the statue.
This isn't just about art, it's about loyalty. If you speak out now, you risk losing everything. His words coiled around Oriana's throat, squeezing her resolve. But if she stayed silent, what future would they inherit? A bead of sweat trickled down her back as she gripped the rough wood of her chair. Around her, murmurs swelled, voices rising with anger and fear. The seconds slipped away, each tick a reminder of her dwindling time. If she didn't act, the forest and its secrets would be lost forever. Yet the thought of alienating her friends and family made bile rise in her throat. How could she betray the very people she loved? Oriana's breath quickened as she caught the eyes of her closest allies. They looked to her for guidance, but panic surged within her. What if they turn against me? The fear of being ostracized gnawed at her, yet the urgency of the moment clawed for attention. "Y'all need to hear me out now. We can't just sit on this any longer," she wanted to shout. But the words tangled in her throat, choked by the fear of losing her voice, her place in this community. The voices began to quiet. A collective breath held as Oriana stood, her pulse thumping in her ears, a relentless drumbeat of anxiety. "I swear it felt like time was slipping away, like a chicken running from a hawk," she exclaimed, the words bursting forth with urgency. But just as the murmurs shifted to shocked silence, a figure from the back stepped forward, eyes blazing with fury. "You dared defy us, Oriana." The ultimatum hit her like a sudden chill, and the atmosphere crackled with tension. She had just ignited a storm that could either rally her people or tear them apart. The question hung in the air, heavy and unyielding. What would she sacrifice to save the forest? The weight of the moment pressed down on her as she looked around, feeling the eyes of the crowd on her. Each gaze held a mix of expectation and fear, reflecting her own swirling doubts. Oriana knew she stood at a crossroads, and the
Oriana's voice pierced the oppressive silence of the summit of reflection. The statue loomed before her, its stone visage cold and unyielding, a testament to those who let their fears bind them. She squared her shoulders, the weight of history pressing upon her. Shadows of community leaders flickered around her, their expressions a mix of disdain and caution. She would not back down. Not now. Not after awakening the storm within. Tension crackled in the air as urgency built with every heartbeat. They had a choice to make, and so did she. "You really think you can scare me?" The words dripped with venom, igniting the spark of rebellion within her. She met the leader's glare, the challenge fueling her resolve. No longer would she be a mere whisper among the winds. Today she would roar. "Yes, I dare." The crowd shifted, uncertainty mingling with curiosity. She stepped forward, her feet firm against the earth, a small gesture of defiance. The statue loomed above, a silent witness to their fears, but Oriana refused to let it intimidate her. "This statue ain't just stone, it's our chains, holding us down." Her voice rose, each word striking like a hammer against complacency. The leaders exchanged furtive glances, their confidence faltering. Oriana seized the moment, her heart a drumbeat of urgency. "What kind of deal have you all made with the ones holding us back?" The question hung heavy in the air, electric behind her. The disenfranchised citizens shifted, their eyes flickering with hope. "You have the power to stand against this," she urged, her voice wrapping around each listener, calling them to rise. The leaders bristled, their authority cracking under the weight of her words. "You will regret this, Oriana." Another leader spat, their composure fraying like old cloth, but her resolve only hardened. "Regret? Nah, I ain't sitting back while you trade our future away. This forest, it's alive, and it knows us. We ain't giving it up for your easy life." Each word sliced through the tension, sparking a flicker of rebellion in the crowd. Faces turned toward her, eyes wide with recognition. They were not alone. The statue, once a symbol of oppression, began to transform before their eyes, becoming a call to arms against tyranny. As the murmurs of dissent rippled through the crowd, Oriana raised her hands, palms open. "Join me," she called, fierce determination blazing in her gaze. The statue shifted in her mind, no longer a burden but a catalyst for change. With one last glance at the leaders, their faces pale and disbelieving, the summit of reflection rose majestically, a rugged plateau bathed in soft morning light. The sun illuminated the stone amphitheatre carved from the mountainside, where Oriana stood, inhaling crisp air rich with the scent of pine and the cool breath of the shimmering lake below. Leaning against the weathered seat, she traced the rough texture beneath her fingertips, grounding herself as anticipation buzzed in the crowd. The gentle sounds of water lapping at the lake's edge mingled with rustling leaves, creating a serene backdrop to the tension swirling in her heart. History whispered through the stones, echoing the call for recognition and change, embodied by the towering statue at the center, its imposing figure casting shadows across the gathering. Oriana stepped forward, her voice rising above the murmurs of uncertainty rippling through the throng. "Hey, y'all, look at that statue. It's a reminder of everything we've faced together." She gestured emphatically, her curls dancing in the cool breeze that seemed to stir her passion. The statue loomed tall against the blue sky, casting its shadow over the stone seats. The crowd's murmurs grew louder. Some nodded in reluctant agreement, while others narrowed their eyes, skepticism etched on their faces. The invigorating scent of damp earth mixed with fresh morning air bolstered her resolve, even as she felt the weight of resistance around her, palpable as the sunlight warming her back. A voice cut through her fervor, belonging to a community leader adorned in the loyalty of the regime. "Oriana, you are a traitor!" His words dripped with venom, igniting a firestorm of dissent. Gasps erupted from the crowd, disbelief washing over her like a cold wave. The rustling leaves transformed into a cacophony of dissent. The lake, once a tranquil mirror of hope, now reflected the turmoil brewing in the crowd. Clenching her fists, Oriana drew strength from the solidity of the past, even as her present threatened to unravel. "You speak of truth, but what of loyalty?" another voice interjected, a loyalist sneer lacing the air with contempt. The crowd wavered, and in that moment Oriana's pulse quickened. She scanned their faces, sunlight illuminating some with resolve, while others succumbed to fear's shadow. The scent of pine mingled with sweat, thickening the air. Stepping closer to the edge of the amphitheater, she felt the rough stone beneath her heels, anchoring her in this vital moment. "Are we really going to just sit quiet?" she called out, her voice cracking under the weight of her passion. The echoes of her words ricocheted off the cliffs, but the response was mixed, a chorus of uncertainty swirling like mist rising from the lake's surface in the morning light. The summit of reflection loomed before Oriana, an ancient sentinel carved from stone, its features softened by the dusk. Shadows danced along the statue's surface, whispering secrets of those who had once stood in its presence. The crisp air was tinged with pine and the distant scent of smoke, a bittersweet reminder of the stakes at hand. A knot tightened in her stomach, yet determination propelled her onward. The murmurs of dissent among the few who remained echoed in her mind, their loyalty to the regime faltering in the face of truth. The statue, a monument to sacrifice, urged her forward, demanding she confront the darkness that had seeped into their lives. Here at the summit, echoes of the past mingled with the hope of change, a potent reminder of the choices that lay ahead. Oriana's fingers brushed against the cold stone, tracing the lines of a face that had witnessed countless struggles. The crumpled documents in her pocket weighed her down as she glanced at the leaders huddled in groups, their laughter stark against the gravity of her discovery. The flickers of unease danced in their glances as they shifted their weight, avoiding her gaze. They were complicit, clinging to power, while oppression tightened its grip around them. No more. She stepped forward, her voice, a quiet flame igniting in the gathering twilight. "We've been looking the other way. Underneath this loyalty is betrayal, and we have to deal with it." The crowd's murmurs swelled, like a tide rolling in, but the leaders' faces hardened. One, a man with a weathered brow, raised a hand, silencing her with a gesture. "Oriana, these are dangerous accusations. Loyalty is our shield against the regime's wrath. We can't afford to challenge it now." His words dripped with fear, poisoning the hearts of the others. Stifling the courage, she refused to let them retreat into complacency. Not now, not with the truth heavy in her pocket, ready to be unleashed. She pulled the documents from her pocket, holding them aloft like a banner. "These deals are a slap in the face to our ancestors. They've sold us out just to save their own skins while we're left to suffer." The air fell silent under the weight of her words, shock mingling with realization on their faces. Some eyes lit with understanding, while others flickered with doubt. "We can't hide behind loyalty that binds us to chains. We were meant to be free." The statue loomed over them, its gaze unyielding, and in that moment, understanding washed over Oriana. This was not just about her, it was about them, the community, the future that lay ahead. She held their gaze, searching for the sparks of courage she sensed earlier.
The whispers of the past mingled with the cries of the present, and she thought remaining silent would allow the shadows to prevail, determination tightening her grip on the documents. A question hung in the air, palpable and heavy.
Chapter 5. Echoes of Resolve. The forum of discontent buzzed with a nervous energy as shadows stretched beneath the craggy peaks of the undaunted mountains. Oriana Pax slipped between the weathered stalls, where the aroma of grilled lakefish mingled with the pungent scent of mountain herbs wafting from nearby fires. Fishermen shared laughter over a simple meal of barley bread and goat cheese, their camaraderie a stark contrast to the tension surrounding the community leaders' meeting. Above, the last rays of sunlight vanished, leaving a twilight that cast an eerie pall over the forum. This was no place for dissenters, yet Oriana pressed on, the rapid beat of her heart echoing beneath her layered wool cloak. She crouched behind a stack of root vegetables, breath hitching at the sight of the leaders gathered near the old stone dais. The flickering flames from their torches illuminated their grim faces, and she strained to hear their words. "We must silence the whispers, or the spirits of the vanished will haunt us all," one leader warned, his voice low but resolute. A chill settled in Oriana's bones, a reminder of the old superstitions still holding sway, a powerful weapon against dissenters. As she leaned closer, a small black raven landed nearby, its beady eyes glistening in the dim light. A prickle of unease crept over Oriana. She had heard the elders speak of the omen it carried, strife and unrest. She glanced over her shoulder, paranoia creeping in. The enforcers patrolled like wolves, eyes scanning the crowd for any sign of defiance. She could not afford to be caught. With a swift motion she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture of respect for the unseen gods, hoping they would shield her in this moment of peril. Just then a sudden footstep crunched on gravel. Oriana froze, the enforcer's boots thudded behind her, a storm of dread. She darted away, weaving through the throng of people, the scent of grilled fish and simmering herb-infused stew fading into the background. In her haste, she pushed past a group of women sharing a communal meal, their heads bowed in prayer to Eleanor, the goddess of the mountains, seeking protection from the very men who hunted her. Oriana stumbled into the narrow alleyway behind the stalls, her ears ringing as the chill of the evening air bit at her skin. She cast one last glance at the forum, a distant hub of laughter and feasting, blissfully unaware of the looming darkness, ready to engulf it. Betrayal weighed her down, bitterness rising in her throat. Trust had become a luxury she could no longer afford. With that raven's shadow nagging at her thoughts, she muttered a quick prayer to the gods, hoping they'd hear her out, as she vanished into the night, a lone figure against the encroaching darkness. Oriana's heart raced as she pressed deeper into the shadows, the weight of her choices heavy on her shoulders. Dusk settled over the summit of reflection, casting elongated shadows across the jagged rocks as Oriana Pax stood at the precipice. A rapid flutter surged in her chest. The weight of betrayal clenched around her, stealing her breath. Days dwindled away, trust her instincts or submit to the fear rippling through her community. The forest beyond, once vibrant and alive, now loomed dark and foreboding, a stark reminder of what was at stake. If she faltered, the consequences would be irreversible, and the forest would suffer the fate of those who dared to challenge the leader's iron grip. 3 days remained until everything would change forever. Steeling herself, she prepared to confront the storm brewing within her. A gust of wind rattled the trees below, whispering of the chaos that awaited memories of her community's past, swirled in her mind how they had rallied against encroaching threats, fighting to protect their sacred home. Now betrayal lingered like a bitter aftertaste. Could she trust anyone to stand by her side? A sharp breath hitched in her throat as she imagined her allies, their faces twisted in doubt. What if they turned against her? The thought knotted her stomach, but she couldn't afford to be paralyzed by fear. As the sun dipped lower, the threat of isolation crept closer, time slipping away. Action was imperative. The stone beneath her feet chilled her, grounding her in the reality of her choices. The leader's power tightened like a noose, their eyes seeming to bore into her, waiting for her to falter. Glancing back toward the path leading to her community, the voices of her friends echoed in her mind, urging her to conform, to play it safe. But what would that mean for the forest? For those who still believed in her, she could hide, bury her head in the sand, but at what cost? The thought of failing her home sent a rush of adrenaline through her veins. No time for indecision. Action was imperative. The twilight deepened, panic tightening her chest.
Fists clenched, nails digging into her palms, she grounded herself amidst the rising tide of uncertainty. The elders would not wait for her to find courage. By the week's end they would enact their plan to exploit the forest, and she would either stand against them or be complicit in the destruction. A single tear slipped down her cheek, the taste of salt mingling with the bitterness of betrayal. "We have to stop this, Oriana," she declared fiercely, determination surging within her. "I ain't gonna let 'em drown out my voice anymore." As the last rays of sunlight vanished, the icy grip of fear and resolve intertwined within her. Choosing to fight meant no turning back. The shadows pressed in, but she could feel the pulse of the forest beneath her feet, urging action. A rustle in the bushes behind her snapped her attention, heart racing. She turned.
Dusk draped the Forum of Discontent in a cloak of somber hues, shadows stretching like fingers across the crumbling stone walls that encircled the plaza. The charged energy of gathered voices filled the air, a tumult of anger and desperation swirling around Oriana. A sharp breeze rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of damp earth mingled with iron, a reminder of the oppression etched in every weathered stone. At the heart of the plaza, the towering statue cast its imposing shadow, a stark sentinel of the struggle that had shaped this place. The rustle of leaves accompanied the fervent speeches, echoing in the distance, and as Oriana stepped forward, the rough texture of the stone bench grazed her fingertips, grounding her in this moment of defiance. As she moved deeper into the forum, the crowd's energy intensified like a storm gathering strength. Voices clashed, some rising in fervor, while others fell to hushed tones, each whisper weaving fear into the fabric of the night. The smell of sweat mingled with the earthy aroma of the nearby lake, the refreshing scent a stark contrast to the oppressive atmosphere pressing against her chest. She paused, drawing in a breath. Her throat felt parched while she battled the whirlwind inside her. The sight of the enforcers broad-shouldered and scowling, their presence like a dark thundercloud, made her feel her resolve stiffen, and she pressed on, fueled by the urgency of her mission. The statue grew larger as she approached the center of the plaza. Oriana's heart thudded in rhythm with the distant beat of drums, a call to arms echoing in her ears. The rough surface of the stone beneath her palms felt grounding, urging her to speak. Yet as she opened her mouth, the cacophony around her swelled, drowning her out in a tide of opposition. The leaders stood in a semicircle, their faces a mix of disdain and amusement, a wall of authority that threatened to crush her. "You dare to speak?" one sneered, his voice cutting through the air like a knife, silencing the crowd with a mere glance. The crowd shifted restlessly, concern and uncertainty flickering in their gazes. Oriana clenched her fists, the rough stone of the bench digging into her skin as she fought to reclaim her voice. But the leader's laughter rolled over her like thunder, leaving her feeling small and isolated beneath the towering monument of oppression. "You think your words can change anything?" another leader taunted, his tone dripping with condescension. The murmurs from the crowd rippled, uncertainty washing over them like a wave, and a weight settled in her chest. As dusk thickened around them, shadows deepened, swallowing the light and leaving her alone in the darkening world of the forum. The distant sounds of anger and debate faded into a haunting echo, a reminder of her struggle to unite the people against their oppressors. The rough stone beneath her fingers felt heavy, a palpable reminder of her fight. A chill settled in the air, and defeat clung to. The summit of reflection rose majestically at dusk, the last golden rays of sunlight spilling dramatically over the rugged mountain tops. A crisp breeze swept through, carrying the earthy scent of pine, mixed with the sharp tang of stone, stirring memories of laughter and stories shared under ancient trees. Oriana Pax stood at the precipice, fingers brushing the weathered surface of the stone, its cool texture anchoring her to the moment. Below, the lake shimmered like a polished mirror, reflecting the fading beauty of dusk, alongside the uncertainty weighing on her mind. Each gentle lap of water against the shore echoed her inner turmoil, heavy with the burdens of her choices and her community's struggles. Oriana's gaze drifted toward the horizon, where the sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the land. The forest whispered secrets just out of reach, promising hope yet haunting her with memories of betrayal. She gripped a small stone in her palm, its edges sharp against her skin, a comfort she sought but couldn't grasp. "Why's it got to be so dang hard to pick?" she asked the wind, her voice a fragile thread. A soft hum escaped her lips, a tune her mother had sung long ago, weaving through her thoughts as she tried to shake off the weight of indecision. Suddenly, the scent of damp earth filled her lungs, and in an instant she was that little girl again, running through the trees, giggling as her friend dared to defy the elders' rules. The memory flickered,
as sharp as the chill in the air, reminding her of the price of silence. Her breath quickened, heart racing at the memory of her friend standing up to the leaders and paying the price. A shudder rippled through her. The thought of standing alone twisted her stomach, yet the idea of doing nothing was equally intolerable. She shifted her weight, the stone beneath her feet shifting slightly, as if urging her to make a choice. The stillness pressed in, heavy and suffocating. "I can't just stand by and do nothing," she muttered, fingers fidgeting with the stone, tracing its contours as if it held the answers she sought. A flutter of nerves raced through her. Should I call them the others? The question hung in the air, unspoken yet loud in her mind. Rallying the community felt daunting, yet the thought of retreating into silence loomed like surrendering to her fears. As the final rays of sunlight faded into twilight, shadows deepened around her, stark against the warmth that was slipping away. "Mark my words, Oriana," she whispered into the stillness, a mantra against the encroaching night. "Sitting still's only going to land us in hot water." Her resolve solidified as she took a deep breath, the cool air invigorating her spirit. Whispers from the forest urged her onward, tales of old heroes echoing in her thoughts. She could feel
The summit of reflection loomed before Oriana, a jagged silhouette against the bleeding sky as dusk descended. A chill crept in, wrapping around her like a warning. She stood at the precipice, heart pounding, suffocated by the gravity of her decision. Betrayal had struck deep. She faced a choice: sink into the safety of silence, or rise against the leaders threatening her community. If she didn't act within the week, the forest that cradled their lives would wither, along with the hope for change flickering within her. Urgency clawed at her resolve, demanding action. No more hesitation, no more retreat. The wind howled around her, carrying whispers of doubt that tugged at her resolve. Memories of past betrayals flooded her mind. Friends turned enemies, alliances shattered in the blink of an eye. How could she trust anyone again? Her breathing quickened, anxiety thickening the air. Each breath felt like a countdown pressing against her ribs, as the mountains seemed to urge her to decide. The urge to flee surged through her, but the thought of her community suffering, of the forest dying, made her stomach churn. The leaders were ruthless, and she had witnessed their brutal tactics firsthand. If she stepped forward, would she find solidarity or another dagger in her back? A rustle in the underbrush startled her, a reminder that she wasn't alone. Her heart raced as she turned, half expecting a spy sent to silence her thoughts. But it was just a deer, its large eyes reflecting the fading light, seeming to judge her indecision. The weight of every second ticking down pressed against her. 3 days left. 3 days to rally the people, to inspire them to stand against their oppressors. Could she stand tall when fear wrapped its icy fingers around her courage? Loneliness seeped into her bones. Was she ready to risk everything for a cause that might leave her even more isolated? As the sun dipped lower, shadows stretched across the summit, closing in around her. She teetered on the edge of a choice that could alter everything. The leaders would soon tighten their grips, and if she didn't act now, she might never have the chance again. Her mind raced. Gather the trusted allies she had left. Speak to them about the dangers looming over their heads. But what if they turned against her? What if this was the moment she lost everything? No time, no choice. The urgency felt like a rock in her gut, heavy and unyielding. She breathed in the cool air, letting it fill her lungs. Action called to her. With a final glance over the treetops, Oriana squared her shoulders, determination blazing in her chest. "I'll track 'em down. They've got to understand what's at stake," she whispered, her voice barely. Chapter 6. Echoes of Resolve. At dawn, the summit of reflection lay enshrouded in mist, clinging to the jagged rocks like a whisper from the vanished people. The crisp air carried the earthy scent of wet moss, mingling with the distant calls of morning birds. Oriana Pax crouched among the underbrush, her fingers brushing against the cool soil, urgency coursing through her veins. Nearby, the village stirred to life, the aroma of grilled fish and herb-infused stews wafting in the brisk morning air. She paused, swallowing hard as she glanced back at the narrow path leading down the mountain, the sound of approaching vehicles echoing ominously in her mind. The damp soil filled her nostrils as visions of the ancient artifact, hidden away by ancestors to protect the land, swirled in her mind. Oriana's breath quickened as she dug deeper into the underbrush, her instincts kicking in.
Just as her fingers grazed something cool and metallic, the distant rumble of engines shattered the tranquility, sending a jolt through her. She hesitated, casting a wary glance toward the narrow path where guards would soon patrol, their shadows creeping closer with the sun's ascent. Excitement and dread intertwined within her as she finally glimpsed the artifact half buried under roots. She had to be quick. Capture would snuff out the last flicker of hope for her people. With a surge of determination, Oriana yanked the artifact free, a small, intricately carved totem that felt warm against her palm, pulsing with the life of the mountain itself. She whispered a quick prayer, invoking Aelenor's favor, hoping the goddess of the mountains would shield her from the guards. But as she turned to flee, a guard emerged at the edge of the clearing, silhouetted against the sun. Her heartbeat quickened, and she stepped back, branches snapping underfoot in the stillness of dawn. The guard's confusion morphed into alarm as he lunged forward, and Oriana's instincts kicked in. She ducked low and darted past the trees, branches clawing at her sleeves. The engines of the authorities roared closer, yet she clutched the artifact tightly, its presence a burning reminder of her mission. Glancing back, she met the guard's gaze and instinctively bowed her head, a gesture of respect even as urgency gripped her. Her mother had always taught her to honor others, even in crisis. It was a lesson she clung to as she raced away from the summit of reflection. As she reached the threshold of the trees, the sun's rays finally broke through, illuminating the path ahead. Oriana paused, panting, the artifact clutched tightly in her hand. The whispers of the vanished people seemed to dance in the breeze, urging her to keep moving. In the distance,
the forest loomed behind Oriana, a dark mass that swallowed sound and light. She stood at the summit of reflection, the morning sun casting silver glimmers on the surface of the artifact she clutched. Cool metal pressed against her palm, anchoring her in a reality thick with expectation. The whispers of her ancestors swirled like mist, brushing her ears while the wind carried their weighty presence. Here, at the edge of everything, the pulse of history throbbed beneath her feet, urging her to listen. The distant rumble of vehicles faded, but the urgency remained. Alone in that moment, Oriana bore the weight of a legacy demanding action. A promise lingered in the air, and she inhaled deeply, ready to face it. Oriana's grip tightened around the artifact, its edges biting into her skin. She looked out over the valley, where her community lay nestled like a fragile dream. Would they believe in me? That thought gnawed at my gut, like a hungry dog, reminding me of every time I had slipped up. This thing's got a pulse, like it's alive. It could turn everything upside down for us. Yet, with it came a burden she could not ignore. She swayed slightly, her breath shallow, the air thick with unspoken fears. A rustle in the underbrush sent a jolt through her. She was not just a keeper of history, but a catalyst for change, and the stakes had never been higher. The spirits swirled around her, carrying echoes of past leaders, voices that had known both triumph and defeat. Each whisper was a reminder of her bloodline, the strength that coursed through her veins. They had faced oppression with courage. Could she do the same? Oriana closed her eyes, envisioning her people's faces, the elders who had taught her the ways of the past, the children who deserved a future. A shudder coursed through her, blending fear with resolve. She opened her eyes, fire sparking in her belly like a campfire catching wind, ready to face whatever came next. The wind picked up, swirling leaves in a dance that felt both chaotic and purposeful. Oriana stepped forward, feeling the pull of destiny. What if she failed? The thought loomed ominously, pressing heavily on her, but the image of her ancestors surged within her, lending strength. She took a deep breath, her shoulders back, a stance that held both defiance and grace. Embracing the fear as a catalyst, each heartbeat echoed like a drum, a rhythm urging her to act. With fierce resolve, she vowed to honor her lineage, to gather her people and wield the artifact's power wisely. As the sun climbed higher, golden light spilled across the valley, illuminating the shadows that had haunted her. The responsibility she felt was not a burden, but a testament to her purpose. She would lead, not as a solitary. The Forum of Discontent thrummed with anticipation under the midday sun, a living pulse in a vast circular plaza surrounded by crumbling stone walls and war-scarred monuments. Oriana Pax stood at its heart, clutching the artifact, a relic imbued with history and power. As she surveyed the sea of anxious faces, doubt warred with determination in her chest. Would they rise with her? Behind them, the mountain loomed, an imposing witness to their struggle. The crowd's heat pressed in, charged with emotions, and the weight of the moment settled over them. Would they unite or fracture? We can't let them trample our hopes. Oriana's voice sliced through the murmurs, igniting a flicker of hope. She raised the artifact, its surface gleaming in the sunlight, casting fractured light onto the crowd. Some eyes sparkled with curiosity, others narrowed in skepticism. A ripple of uncertainty passed among them, the air thick with fear, but she wouldn't back down. This is our chance to reclaim what's ours. And what if it fails? A voice cut through, sharp and cold. A man stepped forward, brow furrowed, hands clenched. What if this artifact is a curse? We've seen what they can do. The crowd shifted, uneasy whispers swirling. Instead of retreating, Oriana stepped closer, her gaze steady. It's not the artifact that brings power, it's us. Together we can wield it. Together, another voice echoed, softer but heavy with doubt. A woman shook her head, eyes wide. What if we lose each other? We've already lost so much. Tension thickened around her. The faces shifted, a tapestry of fear, hope, and longing for safety. Glancing at the mountain's shadow stretching toward them, a reminder of their oppression, she pressed on, her voice steady. I understand your fear, but giving in means surrendering to darkness. We must believe in something greater than ourselves. Murmurs grew louder, clashing voices reverberating through the forum. Some rallied behind her, fists raised, while others turned away, shoulders slumping. Oriana's determination surged, not with anger, but with a fierce resolve. Look around, she implored, urgency swelling in her chest. This is our moment. If we don't act now, we risk losing everything. The air crackled with tension, resolve igniting in some eyes, while others remained clouded with doubt, a rift widening among them. Voices began to harmonize, some joining her call, while others hesitated. Oriana glanced at the artifact one last time, its pulse steady, a reminder of the power they could unleash together. The mountain loomed behind her, a guardian and adversary, but she stood firm. Will you stand with me? She shouted, her voice. The forum of discontent pulsed with a restless energy, a sea of faces twisted by doubt and fear. In the center stood Oriana Pax, anxiety coursing through her, the moment pressing down like a storm cloud ready to burst. If she failed to unite her people before the week's end, the forest and their only hope would be lost forever. Y'all, we gotta come together. Our ancestors are with us, guiding our way, she shouted, her voice breaking through the murmur of dissent as she raised the ancient artifact high, its aura shimmering in the afternoon light. Each second amplified the stakes of her plea. Could they embrace this fight against oppression, or would they scatter like leaves in a gale? As she called upon the spirits of her ancestors, a wave of energy surged through her, igniting the crowd's hope. But just as the crowd's resolve began to strengthen around her, a sharp voice sliced through the air. This is madness. A man shouted from the back, his brow furrowed in skepticism. You think that ancient trinket can save us? It's nothing but a relic. The tension crackled around them. Time was slipping away, and if she couldn't turn this around, the weight of failure settled heavily in her chest. We have 3 days left. If we do not act now, the forest will be gone, and so will our future. The man stepped forward, his presence commanding, and his gaze piercing. You speak of unity, but your actions have driven a wedge between us. My family has ties to the oppressors you vilify. You are asking us to turn against our own. Faces she once thought were allies contorted with confusion. Doubt surged through the audience, and Oriana struggled to maintain her composure. We must rise above our pasts. This is about the forest, about our children. The skeptics grew louder, their voices a cacophony of fear and anger. You can't expect us to follow a leader who can't even guarantee our safety. Someone yelled, and Oriana felt a surge of adrenaline course through her. She could see the split in the crowd widening, the once supportive faces now shadowed by uncertainty. The artifact pulsed in her grip, a reminder of the urgency pressing on her. We ain't got time for this. Those oppressors won't sit around while we find our guts. But how can we trust you? Another skeptic challenged, eyes narrowed. You're asking us to risk everything for a chance at change. What if your vision leads us to ruin? Doubt spread rapidly, and Oriana felt the weight of the moment. The clock loomed closer, and if she lost their faith, there would be no chance to salvage their future. With resolve surging through her veins, Oriana lifted the artifact higher, its glow illuminating her determined features. If we don't band together now, we'll be losing not just our... The forum of discontent buzzed with a restless energy, the air thick with uncertainty and the scent of damp earth. Oriana Pax stood at the center, her heart thumped against her rib cage, the afternoon sun glinting off the ancient artifact in her hands. She had come to inspire her people to rise against the oppressive forces threatening their home, the forest that had sheltered them for generations. But time slipped away relentlessly. With only days left until irreversible destruction began, she had to summon the spirits of their ancestors and ignite a flame of resistance before it was too late. The weight of history settled upon her shoulders, and the murmurs of doubt from the crowd echoed like chains around her heart. Oriana raised the artifact high, its surface shimmering, casting fleeting shadows on the faces of the gathered community. "Listen to me," she called, her voice trembling with urgency. "We stand on the brink of destruction, but we are not alone. Our ancestors fought for this land, for our freedom. If we do not act by the end of this week, we will lose everything." A ripple of unease washed over the crowd, whispers of dissent swirling in the air. Some turned their backs, eyes darting away. Fear clutched their hearts tighter than loyalty. With each passing moment, the chance for unity slipped further from her grasp. The tension in the air intensified as she continued, sweat trickling down her spine. "You fear the consequences of standing up, but what's worse, to fight together or to live in chains?" A man stepped forward, his brow furrowed, skepticism etched into his features. "What if they retaliate? What if we lose everything?" His voice was a dagger, piercing her resolve. The crowd murmured in agreement, their fear palpable. Oriana took a step closer, desperation igniting her words. "If we do nothing, we will lose our land, our heritage, and our future. The choice is ours to make, but time is not on our side." A flicker of hope sparked in the eyes of a few, but doubt loomed like a shadow. Oriana pressed on, each heartbeat echoing in her chest. "Our ancestors sacrificed their lives for this very moment. Their spirits are with us." As she spoke, she felt a shift in the crowd, a collective breath as some began to nod, buoyed by the thrill of possibility, but others remained frozen, caught in the web of fear. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows that seemed to whisper of the impending deadline. "We have until the end of the week. If we don't act now, it will be too late." The crowd's hesitation hung thick in the air, and Oriana's pulse quickened. One last push, she thought, and then she would either rally them or lose them forever. What will you tell your children? That you stood by, or that you fought for them? Chapter 7. Echoes of Empowerment. Dusk enveloped the forum of discontent, casting elongated shadows across the anxious faces gathered in the circular plaza. Crumbling stone walls loomed around them, remnants of a tumultuous past that echoed in the charged atmosphere. Oriana Pax ascended the makeshift podium, urgency coursing through her as she faced the crowd. "We must dismantle the statue," she declared, her voice piercing the tumult. Time slipped away, and if they did not act soon, this relic of oppression would remain a symbol of their complicity. Doubt clouded her thoughts. The community she fought for stood on the edge of a precipice, and the stakes escalated with each passing moment. If change did not come before the week ended, loyalty would be pitted against justice, with the ancient woods paying the ultimate price. Oriana's impassioned plea met resistance. "You're asking us to turn against our own," a woman shouted from the back, her features twisted with anger. A wave of dissent surged through the crowd, objections ringing out, each one striking at Oriana's resolve. She swallowed hard, scanning their faces. Some flickered with hope, while others burned with defiance. The distant rumble of drums echoed ominously, a reminder of the encroaching threat beyond the trees. They had only days left to act, and the tension mounted with every heartbeat. 3 days, she shouted, her voice cutting through the noise. 3 days until we lose everything." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, quickly overshadowed by another shout. "What if we provoke them?" "What then?" a man called, his voice trembling with uncertainty. Doubt spread like poison among them. "What if we do nothing?" Oriana countered, desperation creeping into her tone. "If we let this statue remain, we condemn both the forest and ourselves." Each second echoed in her mind, urging her to fight harder. She could see glimmers of change in some eyes, but those clinging to tradition resisted, unwilling to risk their comfort for an uncertain future. The conflict hung in the air, like an impending tempest, and Oriana felt the weight of it pressing down on her.
As the shouts grew louder, Oriana's breath quickened. "Listen!" she cried, her urgency sharpening her voice. "We can't be divided. The forest depends on us." For a fleeting moment, silence fell, every heart in the forum holding its breath. Then the drums intensified, signaling the approaching chaos, reverberating through the ground like a warning. A wave of anxiety washed over Oriana. Their time was running out, and the prospect of losing their support gnawed at her. Would they unite, or would fear consume them?
As dusk draped its velvet cloak over the forum of discontent, the air thickened with the earthy scent of damp stone and rustling leaves. A low hum of anxious voices vibrated through the circular plaza, rising and falling like waves against the crumbling stone walls, which bore witness to centuries of struggle. The towering statue at the center cast a long shadow, its grim visage a stark reminder of oppression. Oriana stood before the crowd, feeling the charged atmosphere wrap around her. The urgency of the moment pulsed in her veins as she prepared to confront the fears and doubts swirling among her fellow citizens. Oriana took a step forward, the crowd shifting as a collective breath was held in anticipation. Shadows danced across their faces, some marked by determination, others shrouded in uncertainty. "This statue," she began, her voice steady yet infused with passion, "is not our protector. It's a monument to our oppression, a relic of a history that has silenced too many voices. We stand here today. At the edge of a choice, will we let fear bind us, or will we unite against this tyranny?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd, a mixture of agreement and dissent, punctuated by the rustling leaves overhead, as if nature itself awaited their response. "Look around you. The stories of our ancestors echo in these walls, in the veins of this land. They fought for freedom, yet we remain tethered to this oppressive symbol. What do we truly gain by clinging to it?" The crowd's eyes flickered from the statue back to her, some faces softening, others hardened by doubt. A distant rumble of thunder rolled across the hills, a reminder of the storm brewing both outside and within. Oriana's voice rose, fueled by the energy of the moment. "I have walked the paths of the oppressed, felt the weight of silence in my bones. I sacrificed everything for the chance to ignite a spark of change among you. Will you allow fear of the past to keep you from embracing a future where we all thrive?" She paused, her gaze sweeping over the crowd, each face a testament to their struggle. The first drops of rain fell, mingling with the scent of wet stone and fresh earth. As the rain washed over the forum, drumming a rhythmic pulse against the murmurs of contemplation, Oriana stood tall. The statue, though still imposing, felt diminished, softened by the rain, as her words began to resonate with her neighbors. In that moment, the air hummed with possibility. A new dawn was rising, and it was theirs to embrace. The rain drummed rhythmically against the stone, a pulse resonating in the forum of discontent. Oriana stood at the podium, facing a sea of anxious faces, their eyes glistening in the dim light. Shadows from the towering statue twisted around them like dark fingers, and amidst the storm's oppressive presence, a shift unfurled in the air. She inhaled sharply, the weight of unspoken stories hanging like a thick fog. This was no longer just her struggle, it was theirs, woven together in a tapestry of hope. She straightened her back, squared her shoulders, and let the energy of the gathering seep into her bones. Change was upon them, they were ready. "Look at that stone, y'all. It's standing over us like a big old weight, reminding us of our heartaches. But what if we took that back for ourselves?" Oriana's voice sliced through the murmurs, a clarion call for unity. She stepped forward, her hands sweeping the air, attempting to lift despair from their shoulders. Fear hovered, palpable, yet the rain washed away their doubt. The statue, once a symbol of oppression, now felt like a challenge. In their eyes flickered recognition, a spark of defiance. With every word, Oriana wove in her story. "My brother, he lost his dreams to that statue. He stood before it, hoping for change, but tradition crushed him. I watched him fade, and I promised I would not let his memory become a footnote in history. We can knock that symbol down. Let's grab hold of our future with both hands." Her voice grew stronger, fueled by the faces staring back at her, each one a mirror reflecting her resolve. The crowd shifted, a ripple of energy coursing through them. Some grimaced, others nodded. The tension in their shoulders softened, and they leaned in, as if her words were an anchor in the storm. "I know you fear the backlash, the whispers that come when we stand out. But what if we all stood together? What if we became the storm that washed that statue away?" Her chest tightened with hope and terror, but she pressed on, the rhythm of her speech quickening.
We are not alone, we are the many, and we can break these chains. As her voice faded, silence blanketed the forum, heavy with unvoiced hopes. Oriana scanned their faces, searching for an answer, a sign. Were they ready to rise with her? The statue loomed behind her, but now it felt different. The rain had washed away some of its menace, revealing a fragility, like a relic of a past, that no longer held them captive. With a deep breath, she stepped back, watching as hesitant hands began to reach out, fingers intertwining in tentative solidarity. The air shifted, charged with possibility. Together they might forge a new path.
Dusk settled over the forum of discontent, casting long shadows across the weathered stone plaza. The air carried the sharp scent of damp earth, mingling with a cool breeze from the nearby lake, refreshing yet laden with tension. Oriana stood at the podium, the rough texture of the wood beneath her fingers conveying the weight of tradition she was about to confront. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, a blend of fervent and pleading voices, creating a charged atmosphere that echoed against the ancient, war-scarred walls. A towering statue loomed behind her, its stone face a grim reminder of the oppression that had silenced so many. As she inhaled deeply, the metallic taste of rust lingered in her mouth, a reminder of the high stakes. Oriana scanned the sea of faces before her, some illuminated by the fading light, others shrouded in shadow, her breath quickening. The crowd shifted, their energy palpable, as if they were a single entity poised on the edge of a decision. Clearing her throat, she called out, her voice slicing through the murmur like a blade. "Y'all, we're not just here to remember what's been done to us. We're here to take back what's ours." Her words hung heavily in the air, filled with the promise of change, and the weight of anticipation pressed against her shoulders. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves of the nearby trees, a soft whisper of encouragement as Oriana spoke. The rough stone walls encircling the plaza seemed to lean in, listening intently as she recounted the sacrifices of those who had fought before her. Each word ignited a spark within her, a fiery determination pushing against the shadow of fear passing across her face. "Let's come together and tear down this thing that's been holding us back," she urged, gauging the crowd's reaction. The murmurs grew louder, intertwining with the distant echoes of passionate debates, a chorus of dissent that had long been silenced. As she continued, the scent of damp earth rose from the ground, mingling with the musty odor of old stone, grounding her thoughts. The rough texture of the podium felt like a lifeline, steadying her as she called for unity. The crowd responded, a wave of murmurs and shouts cascading over her, each voice lifting her spirit higher. An electric tension filled the air, and in that moment Oriana reveled in her newfound strength. With her final words, Oriana raised her arms, inviting them to join her, to take a stand against centuries of oppression. The shadow of the statue loomed behind her, but it felt lighter now, as if the crowd's collective breath could push it aside. Hope surged among them, invigorating their spirits, yet her fists clenched slightly, a shadow of fear passing across her face. At the summit of reflection, the last rays of the sun spilled over the horizon, casting an ethereal glow on Oriana Pax. She stood alone, a rapid pulse echoing in her ears as anxiety surged within her. 3 days remained before the council would decide the fate of the forest. If they chose destruction, her community would face catastrophic loss. This moment demanded she confront her fear and step into her role as leader. Yet the echoes of her own words lingered, a haunting reminder of the potential fallout. Would her community rally behind her, or would they abandon her for the safety of the familiar? Oriana's mind raced as she envisioned the faces of those who had listened, their expressions a mixture of hope and skepticism. What if they viewed her as a traitor instead of a champion? She clenched her fists, her gaze dropping as uncertainty gnawed at her resolve. She had ignited a fire of rebellion, yet the council's decision loomed over her like a storm cloud, threatening despair. Time slipped away, each passing moment a reminder of the urgency of her situation. Could she bear to lead them to ruin instead of redemption? A rustle in the nearby bushes startled her, shattering her thoughts. Heart racing, she turned to confront the potential threat lurking nearby. The shadows danced in the fading light, and she felt the tension in the air, as if the very ground beneath her was alive with scrutiny. What would she do if the council turned against her? If her own community betrayed her?
The earth felt unstable underfoot, urging her to act swiftly before it was too late. A surge of determination coursed through her as she remembered the faces of those who had inspired her, those who had challenged her to rise to the occasion. They were counting on her. The fear still clawed at her insides, but a flicker of resolve ignited within. "I will not falter," she whispered, her voice firm. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, yet she had to advocate for change to protect her community's future. The consequences of inaction were clear and terrifying, yet so was the potential for transformation. As dusk deepened into night, she embraced her new role, ready to confront the council. With one last glance at the horizon, she took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. Just as she prepared for the battle to come, a distant howl shattered the silence, a warning that the opposition was already advancing. Time was running out, and the stakes had escalated. Would she have what it takes to lead them in a fight for their very survival?